Marcus Chen stood at the viewing port of his mining vessel, watching the asteroid belt drift past in lazy spirals. His weathered hands gripped the metal railing as he thought about his mother's latest message. She had been working on the diplomatic station at Kepler 442b, trying to negotiate peace between the warring Zephyrian Empire and the Crystalline Confederacy. The communication array crackled to life behind him. "Captain Chen, incoming priority transmission from Galactic Command." Marcus turned, his dark eyes narrowing. Priority transmissions were never good news. He walked to the console and activated the holographic display. Admiral Rodriguez appeared, her usually composed face twisted with grief and anger. "Marcus, I'm sorry to inform you that Diplomatic Station Harmony was destroyed 3 hours ago. There were no survivors." The words hit him like a physical blow. His mother, Dr. Elena Chen, had been the head diplomat on that station. She had dedicated her life to preventing wars, to finding peaceful solutions where others saw only conflict. The irony wasn't lost on him that she had died in an act of violence. "Who?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Zephyrian Empire claims it was an accident during a weapons test. Our intelligence suggests otherwise. The blast pattern indicates a deliberate targeting of the station's core reactor." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. His mother had always told him that violence was never the answer, that there was always another way. She had raised him to believe in diplomacy, in the power of words over weapons. But as he stared at the hologram of the destroyed station, those lessons felt like distant echoes. The Zephyrians were a proud warrior race, standing nearly 9 feet tall with chitinous armor and forearms that could crush steel. They had conquered dozens of worlds through sheer brutality. The Crystalline Confederacy, their enemies, were beings of living mineral who could reshape their bodies at will and manipulated gravity itself. Both races had been fighting for centuries, and his mother had been trying to broker a ceasefire. "Marcus," Admiral Rodriguez continued, "I know this is difficult, but we need you to return to Earth immediately. There will be a memorial service, and the Galactic Council wants to discuss the situation." He nodded slowly, his mind already racing. The Galactic Council was a joke, a collection of species that talked endlessly while doing nothing. They would express their condolences, hold meetings, and write strongly worded letters. Meanwhile, his mother's killers would continue their war, probably laughing about how easily they had eliminated the human peacemaker. "Understood, Admiral. I'll set course for Earth." As the transmission ended, Marcus stood alone in the silence of his ship. Around him, the automated systems hummed quietly, mining precious metals from the asteroids. It was peaceful work, the kind his mother had always approved of, building instead of destroying, creating instead of conquering. He walked to his private quarters and pulled out a small wooden box from under his bunk. Inside were mementos from his military days, before he had listened to his mother's pleas to leave the service and find a peaceful profession. His fingers traced over the medals, the commendations, the small devices that most people would never recognize. 20 years ago, Marcus Chen had been known by a different name in certain circles. The Shadow of Terra, they had called him. He had been part of an elite unit that the military officially denied existed. They were humans who had been enhanced, trained, and equipped to handle threats that conventional forces couldn't touch. He picked up a small crystalline device, no bigger than his thumb. It was a neural interface designed to link directly with advanced combat systems. The technology had been banned by the Galactic Council after they realized what humans could become when properly motivated and equipped. Marcus had retired from that life at his mother's request. She had seen what the enhancement programs were doing to human soldiers, how they were becoming something beyond normal humanity. She had begged him to find another path, to prove that humans could be builders and peacemakers rather than just warriors. For 20 years, he had honored her wishes. He had become a miner, searching for rare elements that could be used in medical equipment and civilian technology. He had donated most of his profits to refugee relief efforts and educational programs. He had been the son she wanted him to be, but now she was gone, murdered by aliens who thought humans were weak because they chose diplomacy over destruction. Marcus closed the box and sealed it. Then he activated his ship's communication system and sent out a coded message on an old military frequency. It was a simple transmission, just a series of numbers that would mean nothing to most people. But to certain individuals scattered across the galaxy, it would be as clear as a war cry. The shadow of Terra was awakening, and he was calling his pack. As his mining vessel turned toward Earth, Marcus felt the familiar cold calculation settling over his mind. The Zephyrians had made a critical error in their understanding of human nature. They had seen his mother's dedication to peace as weakness, her compassion as cowardice. They thought that by killing her, they would intimidate other human diplomats. They were about to learn that humanity's capacity for peace was matched only by their capacity for war. And when humans went to war, they didn't just fight to win. They fought to ensure that their enemies never threatened anyone ever again. The galaxy was about to remember why Earth's children were feared. 3 days after his mother's memorial service, Marcus stood in an abandoned warehouse on Luna Station. The ceremony had been everything she would have hated, full of empty political speeches and hollow promises of justice. The Galactic Council had offered their sympathies while carefully avoiding any mention of actual consequences for the Zephyrians. Now, in the shadows between shipping containers, Marcus waited for ghosts to emerge from the darkness. The first to arrive was Yuki Tanaka, moving with the silent grace that had earned her the nickname Whisper. She appeared beside him without making a sound, her slight frame deceiving anyone who didn't know that she could kill a Gorillian berserker with her bare hands. "Marcus," she said simply, her voice carrying decades of shared history. "I'm sorry about Elena." He nodded, remembering how his mother had always insisted that Yuki stay for dinner whenever she visited. Elena Chen had treated all of his former squadmates like family, never asking about their missions or the blood on their hands. She had simply fed them and listened to their stories about civilian life. 20 years, Marcus said. 20 years since we hung up our weapons. "Some weapons don't stay hung up," came a gravelly voice from behind a container. Jackson Webb stepped into the light, his massive frame casting long shadows. The big man's cybernetic eye glowed softly in the dim lighting, a souvenir from their last official mission. "The moment I got your signal, I knew it was time." More figures emerged from the darkness. Sarah Kim, whose talent for electronics had earned her the codename Ghost in the Machine. David Santos, the team's former medic, who could heal with one hand and kill with the other. Alexandra Petrov, their demolitions expert, who could level a city block or defuse a bomb with equal skill. One by one, they appeared until 12 figures stood in a circle. The survivors of Unit Omega, the most classified military program in human history. They had been officially disbanded after the Treaty of Arcturus, which limited human military enhancement in exchange for galactic peace. "The old crew," Sarah said, her fingers already dancing over a handheld scanner to ensure their privacy. "Feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago." Marcus looked at each face, seeing the lines that 20 years of civilian life had etched there. They had families now, careers, normal lives, but beneath the surface he could see the predators they had been trained to become. The enhancements were still there, dormant but not gone. The muscle memory, the tactical awareness, the absolute calm in the face of violence, and all still present. "The Zephyrians think they sent a message when they killed Elena," Marcus said. "They think humans are weak because we choose peace over war. They're about to learn why that choice was a mercy, not a limitation." Jackson cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls. "What's the play, boss?" "Information first," Marcus replied. "The official story is that it was an accident during weapons testing. But Admiral Rodriguez showed me the blast analysis. The station was targeted specifically. The reactor overload was precisely timed. This wasn't random violence, it was an assassination." Alexandra pulled out a small device, its surface covered in blinking lights. "I've been analyzing the debris patterns since you sent the signal. Whoever did this used a gravity lance focused through a crystalline matrix. That's not Zephyrian technology. The implications hung in the air like smoke. The Zephyrians were brutal, but they favored direct confrontation and overwhelming force. Gravity weapons were the signature technology of the Crystalline Confederacy, so the crystals killed Elena and let the Zephyrians take the blame," David said. "But why? She was working for peace between both sides." "Maybe that was the point," Yuki suggested. "With the head human diplomat dead and the Zephyrians blamed, any chance of peace talks dies with her. The war continues, both sides bleed each other dry, and the crystals emerge as the dominant power." Marcus felt the old coldness settling over him, the emotional distance that had made him so effective in the field. His mother's death wasn't just murder, It was a calculated move in a larger game with humanity as the pawns. Sarah, I need you to slice into the Confederacy's communication networks. Find me proof of their involvement. David, reach out to our contacts in the medical corps. I want to know who else might be targeted. Alexandra, start gathering equipment. We're going to need tools that don't officially exist anymore. What about the council? Jackson asked. If we move against the crystals without authorization, we'll be branded as terrorists. Marcus smiled, and his teammates felt a chill run down their spines. They remembered that smile from the old days, just before entire enemy fleets disappeared from existence. The council had their chance to seek justice through proper channels. They chose to write strongly worded letters instead. Now it's our turn. The enhancement protocols, Yuki said quietly. We haven't used them in 20 years. Our bodies might not handle the strain. Our bodies were designed to last, Marcus replied. The nanites are still there, just dormant. And I still have access to the activation codes. The warehouse fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. The enhancement protocols had turned them into something beyond baseline human, but at a cost. The psychological effects, the gradual isolation from normal humanity, the addiction to combat and violence. These had been the reasons for the program's termination. Elena wouldn't want this, David said softly. She believed in peace and finding better ways. Marcus turned to face his former medic, his eyes reflecting the cold fury that burned within him. Elena is dead because she believed in peace, because she thought that words could stop monsters. The galaxy doesn't understand mercy, it only understands strength. He activated a holographic display, showing the current positions of crystalline and Zephyrian fleets. While she was trying to save lives, they were planning her death. While the council debates and the media speculates more humans will die, the only language these species understand is violence. So we speak their language, Alexandra said, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had spent too long in retirement. We speak their language, Marcus confirmed, but we speak it better than they do. We speak it in ways that will make them remember why humanity earned its place among the stars not through diplomacy, but through being the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The team began dispersing, each member slipping away into the shadows as silently as they had arrived. Within hours, they would begin the transformation from ordinary citizens back into weapons of war. As Marcus prepared to leave, he touched the small memorial pin on his jacket, a holographic image of his mother smiling as she worked in her garden. She had died believing in the goodness of sentient beings, trusting in the power of understanding and compromise. He would honor her memory by ensuring that her killers never threatened anyone again. The transformation took 48 hours. Marcus lay in the medical bay of his ship, feeling the nanites awakening in his bloodstream like tiny stars igniting. His enhanced metabolism burned through nutrients at an incredible rate, while his nervous system rewired itself for combat efficiency. The pain was excruciating, but he welcomed it. It meant he was becoming himself again. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm system. I'm in their network, Marcus. What I found is worse than we thought. Marcus sat up slowly, his body still adjusting to the enhanced reflexes and strength. Show me. The holographic display materialized above his bed, showing intercepted communications between high-ranking crystalline officials. The messages were in their native harmonic language, but the translation software painted a clear picture of conspiracy. The operation was called Silent Garden, Sarah continued. They targeted Elena specifically because her peace negotiations were actually working. The Zephyrians were ready to agree to a ceasefire, which would have ruined the Confederacy's expansion plans. Marcus read through the messages, his enhanced mind processing the information with cold efficiency. The Crystalline Confederacy had been manipulating the war from the beginning, selling weapons to both sides while positioning themselves as neutral mediators. Elena's diplomatic breakthrough would have ended their profitable conflict. There's more, Sarah said. They're planning to eliminate other human diplomats. Ambassador Johnson on Proxima Station is next on their list. The display shifted to show surveillance footage of Ambassador Rebecca Johnson, a woman in her 60s who had devoted her life to preventing conflicts before they started. She had been Elena's mentor and closest friend, the one who had convinced Marcus's mother to join the diplomatic corps. When? Marcus asked, his voice deadly calm. 72 hours. They're going to make it look like a Zephyrian retaliation for the station bombing. Marcus activated the ship's communication array and sent coded signals to his team. Within minutes, their faces appeared on individual screens around him. Each one showed the subtle changes that marked their reactivation. Sharper features, more intense gazes, the predatory alertness that came with enhanced reflexes. "We have a target and a timeline," Marcus announced. "Ambassador Johnson is next. We're going to stop them." "What's our approach?" Jackson asked. His cybernetic eye was now fully online, giving him targeting capabilities that could track objects moving at near light speed. "Direct intervention. The Crystalline Hit Squad will be using stealth technology and gravity weapons. Yuki, I want you aboard Johnson's station as security. Sarah, monitor all communications and be ready to jam their coordination. Alexandra, prepare explosive surprises for their escape routes." "And you?" David asked. As the team's medic, he had always been the most concerned about the psychological effects of their enhancements. "I'm going hunting," Marcus replied. "The Crystalline think they can hide behind their shape-shifting abilities and superior technology. It's time to remind them that humans are the apex predators of this galaxy." The team dispersed to their assignments, each member slipping into the roles they had perfected decades earlier. Marcus set course for Proxima Station, his ship's enhanced engines pushing him through hyperspace at speeds that would have liquefied an unenhanced human. As he traveled, he reviewed everything he knew about crystalline biology and tactics. They were silicon-based life forms who could alter their molecular structure at will, making them nearly impossible to track with conventional sensors. Their gravity manipulation allowed them to move through space without traditional propulsion, and their weapons could crush matter at the atomic level. But they had weaknesses. Their shape-shifting required enormous amounts of energy, limiting how long they could maintain altered forms. Their gravity manipulation created distinctive quantum fluctuations that enhanced human sensors could detect. And most importantly, they had never faced an enemy who fought as dirty as enhanced humans. Marcus arrived at Proxima Station 18 hours before the scheduled attack. The massive orbital platform housed nearly 1 million beings from dozens of different species, all going about their daily lives unaware of the approaching danger. Ambassador Johnson was conducting a trade negotiation between the Altarian merchants and the Vegan mining guilds, her patient diplomacy preventing what could have escalated into another interstellar conflict. "Yuki, report," Marcus said into his comm. "In position. Station security is typical. Adequate for normal threats, useless against crystalline infiltrators. I've identified 17 potential entry points they could use. Sarah? Their communications are encrypted with quantum harmonics, but I've cracked the base algorithms. The hit team consists of 3 operatives led by someone called the Facet. They're planning to infiltrate during the shift change at 800 hours. Marcus studied the station's schematics, his enhanced mind calculating angles, timing, and probability matrices. The crystalline operatives would try to reach Johnson during her morning briefing, when she would be alone in her office reviewing diplomatic reports. "Change of plans," Marcus announced. "We're not going to intercept them. We're going to follow them back to their source, and that's risky," David warned. "If something goes wrong, Johnson dies. If we just stop this attack, they'll try again with different operatives and better planning. We need to cut off the head of the snake." Marcus began implementing a plan that would have been impossible for baseline humans to execute. Using his enhanced reflexes and the ship's advanced stealth systems, he positioned himself in the station's superstructure, hidden among the massive support beams and power conduits. At exactly 07:45 hours, the quantum fluctuations began. 3 distinct signatures approached the station from different vectors, their crystalline pilots using gravity manipulation to avoid conventional detection. To normal sensors, they would be invisible, but Marcus's enhanced neural interface, linked to military-grade quantum scanners, tracked them like glowing beacons. The operatives phased through the station's hull, their molecular structures shifting to pass through solid matter. Marcus watched them move through the corridors with fluid grace, their crystalline forms adapted to appear as station maintenance personnel. Their shape-shifting was flawless, down to the smallest detail of uniform insignia and facial features. They converged on Ambassador Johnson's office with military precision, each one taking a different approach route to avoid security cameras. The leader, presumably the Facet, moved with the confidence of someone who had killed before and expected to kill again. Marcus allowed them to get within 50 meters of their target before he acted. Moving with enhanced speed, he appeared behind the rear operative like a shadow-given form. His combat knife, forged from monofilament carbon and enhanced with disruption fields, slid between the crystalline's molecular bonds and severed its connection to its gravity manipulation organs. The creature collapsed, its form flickering between shapes as its control systems failed. Marcus caught the body before it could hit the floor and dragged it into an empty maintenance closet. 1 down, 2 to go. The second operative was entering Johnson's outer office when Marcus struck again. This time he used a neural disruptor, a small device that sent targeted electromagnetic pulses designed to scramble crystalline thought patterns. The creature froze mid-step, its body locked in a transitional state between forms. That left the Facet, who had just realized that something was wrong. Marcus could hear the creature's harmonic communication signals as it tried to contact its teammates. When it received no response, it began moving toward Johnson's private office with increased urgency. Marcus appeared in the doorway like a nightmare made real. The Facet spun to face him, its body already shifting into a combat configuration. Extra arms, reinforced carapace, gravity manipulation organs glowing with deadly energy. "You're the Shadow," the Facet said, its voice a crystalline chime of recognition and fear. "But you're supposed to be retired." "Retirement is over," Marcus replied. "Your people killed my mother. Now I'm going to find everyone responsible and show them why humans are feared." The battle was brief but devastating. The Facet was skilled, dangerous, and desperate, but Marcus was enhanced, experienced, and absolutely ruthless. When it was over, the crystalline operative was still alive but completely helpless, its molecular structure disrupted and its gravity organs disabled. "You're going to tell me everything," Marcus said, activating a neural probe that would extract information directly from the creature's quantum consciousness, starting with who gave the order to kill Elena Chen. As the probe began its work, Marcus felt the familiar coldness of absolute purpose settling over him. This was just the beginning. Before he was done, the galaxy would remember why humanity had earned its place among the stars not through diplomacy or trade, but by being the most efficient killers in the known universe. The hunt had begun in earnest. The neural probe extracted information from the Facet's crystalline consciousness, like water from a shattered dam. Marcus stood in the interrogation chamber aboard his ship, watching data streams flow across holographic displays as his prisoners' memories unfolded in excruciating detail. What he discovered changed everything. "Sarah," Marcus said into his comm, his voice tight with controlled fury, "I need you to verify something. Cross-reference Galactic Council voting records with Crystalline Confederacy trade agreements over the past 5 years." "On it," came Sarah's reply. "What am I looking for?" "Patterns. Specific patterns that suggest coordination between council members and crystalline interests." As the probe continued its work, Marcus learned that his mother's assassination was part of something far larger than a simple war profiteering scheme. The Crystalline Confederacy hadn't just been manipulating the conflict. Between themselves and the Zephyrians, they had been systematically eliminating human diplomats across the galaxy while strengthening their political influence within the council itself. Ambassador Harrison on Kepler Station, killed in what appeared to be a transport accident. Diplomat Williams on the Centauri negotiations died from apparent food poisoning. Counselor Martinez at the Trade Summit, victim of a supposed terrorist attack. The list went on, each death carefully orchestrated to look like coincidence or enemy action. "Marcus," Sarah's voice cut through his thoughts, "you need to see this. The voting patterns are clear. Every time a human diplomatic initiative was proposed, specific council members voted it down. Those same members received massive trade deals with the Confederacy within weeks of their votes." The holographic display shifted to show a web of connections between crystalline agents, corrupt council officials, and dead human diplomats. At the center of it all was a name that made Marcus's blood run cold. Councillor Vexathon, the Altarian representative who had personally delivered the eulogy at Elena's memorial service. "He was there," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He spoke about how much he respected my mother's work, how her death was a tragedy for all sentient beings, and he ordered her murder." The Facet's consciousness revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The Crystalline Confederacy wasn't just trying to eliminate human diplomats. They were working to remove humanity from galactic politics entirely. Human negotiators were too effective, too willing to find creative solutions that prevented profitable conflicts. The Confederacy's plan was to reduce humanity to the role of hired muscle, mercenaries without political influence. Marcus terminated the neural probe and looked down at his prisoner. The facet's crystalline form had gone dim, its consciousness retreating deep into its quantum matrix to escape the pain of forced memory extraction. "You've served your purpose," Marcus said. He activated a molecular disruptor, and the crystalline operative dissolved into its component atoms. "Marcus?" David's voice came through the comm, carrying concern. "I'm reading elevated stress hormones and neural activity. The enhancement protocols are pushing you toward combat psychosis." "I'm fine," Marcus replied, though he could feel the cold rage building in his enhanced nervous system. The nanites were designed to optimize him for warfare, but they came with psychological side effects that had troubled the program's creators. "You're not fine. Your emotional regulation is compromised. Remember what happened to Chen 7? Marcus paused, remembering his predecessor in the Shadow program. Chen 7 had been the prototype, the first human to receive full enhancement. He had been brilliant, effective, and completely ruthless. He had also gradually lost his ability to distinguish between threats and innocence, eventually requiring termination by his own team. "This is different," Marcus said. "I have a specific target and clear objectives." "That's what Chen 7 said," David replied. "Right before he tried to eliminate an entire planet, because one terrorist cell was hiding there." Marcus ended the communication and stood alone with his thoughts. The enhancement nanites were indeed affecting his judgment, making everything seem like a threat requiring elimination. But he couldn't stop now. Too many people were counting on him, and the conspiracy was too large to ignore. He activated the ship's communication array and sent a priority message to Admiral Rodriguez. When her image appeared, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The official investigation into Elena's death had hit dead ends and political roadblocks. "Marcus, where are you? You missed your debriefing, and there are reports of unusual activity near Proxima Station." "I'm following leads that your official investigation can't touch," Marcus replied. "How much do you trust the Galactic Council?" "That's a dangerous question to ask, even on a secured channel. I have proof that council members were involved in Elena's assassination. Not just the Crystalline Confederacy, sitting members of the government that's supposed to represent all species." Rodriguez's face went pale. "What kind of proof?" "The kind that would start a war if it became public. Neural extractions from crystalline operatives, communication intercepts, financial records showing payments to council members. The conspiracy goes all the way to the top. Marcus, you need to bring this evidence to the proper authorities. We can't act on illegal intelligence gathering. The proper authorities are compromised. Half of them are taking bribes, and the other half are too concerned with due process to stop the killing. How many more diplomats have to die while we follow proper procedures?" Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "What are you planning?" "Justice," Marcus replied. "The kind that actually works." He terminated the communication before the Admiral could respond. She would try to stop him, try to bring him in for official processing, but there wasn't time for the bureaucratic machinery to grind through the evidence. More human diplomats would die while committees debated and investigators followed proper protocols. Marcus set course for the Altarian homeworld, where Councillor Vexthon maintained his primary residence. The journey would take 3 days at maximum speed, 3 days during which he could plan the most important mission of his life. As his ship jumped into hyperspace, Marcus reviewed the intelligence he had gathered. Vexthon lived in a floating palace above the cloud cities of Altair Prime, protected by energy shields and guarded by a private army. The Altarian had made himself nearly untouchable through wealth and political influence. Nearly untouchable, but not beyond the reach of an enhanced human with nothing left to lose. Marcus began preparing his equipment, each weapon and tool chosen for maximum effectiveness against Altarian defenses. He would infiltrate the palace, extract confirmation of the conspiracy, and ensure that Vexthon never threatened another human diplomat. The nanites in his bloodstream hummed with anticipation, his enhanced nervous system, calculating trajectories and combat probabilities. He could feel the cold logic of the perfect predator settling over his consciousness, and for the first time in 20 years, Marcus Chen felt completely at home. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for peace. It was their willingness to become monsters when monsters threatened what they loved, and Marcus Chen had been the most perfect monster of them all. The floating palace of Counselor Vexthan hung like a jewel above the storm clouds of Altair Prime, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin suns. Energy shields shimmered around its perimeter, and Marcus could see the patrol patterns of the Guardian drones as they moved through the upper atmosphere. To any normal intruder, it would have been an impregnable fortress. Marcus Chen was no longer normal. He hung motionless in the void between dimensions, his ship cloaked by technology that officially didn't exist. The enhancement nanites had pushed his nervous system beyond baseline human limitations, allowing him to interface directly with systems that would have fried an unmodified brain. Around him, holographic displays showed real-time analysis of the palace's defenses. Interesting, he murmured, noting patterns in the energy shield fluctuations. Yuki would appreciate this. His former teammate had always been fascinated by security systems, treating them like puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to be overcome. The thought of her brought a moment of warmth to his enhanced consciousness, quickly suppressed by the cold logic of his current mission. Through his neural interface, Marcus uploaded himself into a maintenance drone that was approaching the palace's lower levels. His consciousness rode the simple artificial intelligence like a passenger, directing it toward a waste processing port that his analysis had identified as the weakest point in the structure's defenses. The transition from virtual presence to physical infiltration took exactly 4.7 seconds. Marcus materialized inside the palace's waste management facility, his enhanced body adapting instantly to the different atmospheric pressure and gravity. Around him, automated systems processed the waste from 1,000 residents and staff members, the sound providing perfect cover for his movements. He moved through the service corridors with predatory grace, his enhanced senses mapping the palace's internal structure as he went. The Altarians had built their stronghold according to their species' aesthetic preferences, flowing curves and organic shapes that reflected their aquatic evolutionary origins. But beauty was irrelevant to a predator focused on his prey. Guard rotation in 30 seconds, he whispered to himself, consulting the pattern analysis his ship's AI had compiled. The palace guards were Altarian military veterans, their amphibious bodies adapted for both land and water combat. They carried plasma weapons and wore personal energy shields, making them formidable opponents for most species. Marcus waited until the patrol passed, then moved deeper into the palace. His destination was Vexithan's private study, located in the tower's highest level where the counselor conducted his most sensitive business. The neural probe data from the crystalline operative had provided detailed information about the room's location and security measures. As he climbed through maintenance shafts and service tunnels, Marcus felt the enhancement nanites optimizing his body for the approaching confrontation. His reflexes accelerated to superhuman speeds, his muscle density increased to provide devastating striking power, and his sensory organs adapted to detect threats across multiple electromagnetic spectra. The transformation was accompanied by a familiar psychological shift. The careful restraint he had maintained for 20 years began dissolving, replaced by the cold efficiency of a living weapon. He could feel his emotional responses becoming muted, his empathy for potential collateral damage fading to insignificance. This was what his mother had feared, what had driven her to convince him to leave military service. The enhancement protocols didn't just create superior soldiers, they created something that was no longer entirely human. But as Marcus reached the upper levels of the palace, he embraced that transformation. His mother was dead because he had listened to her pleas for peace. Now the monsters who killed her would face what humanity became when it stopped holding back. Vexthan's study was protected by multiple layers of security, energy barriers, quantum locks, armed guards, and detection fields that could identify intruders at the molecular level. The Altarian counselor had surrounded himself with defenses that could stop an army. Marcus bypassed them all in less than 3 minutes. The quantum locks yielded to algorithms he had memorized decades earlier. The energy barriers parted like water when he transmitted the proper harmonic frequencies. The guards never saw him coming, their enhanced reflexes still too slow to track movement at superhuman speeds. The detection fields registered nothing because Marcus had learned to control his molecular emissions during his enhancement training. When he finally stood in Vexthan's private study, The Altarian counselor was reviewing holographic documents related to upcoming trade negotiations. The amphibious alien looked up with surprise that quickly turned to terror as he recognized the figure before him. "You," Vexthon said, his voice carrying the distinctive warbling tone of his species. "You're supposed to be retired." "Retirement didn't work out," Marcus replied, moving closer with deliberate slowness. "I found a new career. Pest control." Vexthon reached for an emergency communicator, but Marcus moved with enhanced speed to intercept him. The Altarian's hand was crushed before it could reach the device, bones cracking like dry wood. "Elena Chen," Marcus said, his voice carrying no emotion. "You ordered her death." "You have no proof," Vexthon replied, though his large eyes showed the fear of a creature that suddenly realized it was prey. The Crystalline Confederacy acted independently. "I have neural extracts from their operative. I have communication intercepts. I have financial records showing payments to your accounts." Marcus activated a holographic display showing the evidence he had compiled. "I have everything." Vexthon's amphibious features went pale as he reviewed the data. The evidence was overwhelming, showing years of coordination between his office and crystalline agents. The systematic elimination of human diplomats, the manipulation of council votes, the conspiracy to reduce humanity's political influence, all of it traced back to him. "The humans were becoming too influential," Vexthon said, his defiance returning as he realized he had nothing left to lose. "Your species thinks they can solve every problem, prevent every war. But war is profitable. Conflict drives innovation and economic growth. Your mother would have ended centuries of beneficial instability." Marcus felt the last vestiges of his restraint disappear. The nanites in his bloodstream surged with energy as his enhancement protocols reached full activation. He was no longer Marcus Chen the miner, or even Marcus Chen the soldier. He was the shadow of Terra, the apex predator that humanity had created to protect itself. "You killed her because peace was bad for business," he said, moving closer. "You murdered the kindest person in the galaxy because she was interfering with your profit margins." "It wasn't personal," Vexthon said, backing away. "It was simply necessary." "This isn't personal either," Marcus replied. "It's justice." The interrogation that followed extracted every detail of the conspiracy. Vexthon revealed the names of other council members involved in the plot, the location of hidden communication networks, the planned assassinations of remaining human diplomats. By the time Marcus was finished, he had enough evidence to destroy the conspiracy entirely. But evidence wouldn't bring his mother back. Evidence wouldn't stop future conspiracies from forming. Evidence was just information, and information was only as powerful as the force backing it up. Marcus looked down at the broken form of the Altarian counselor, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Vexthon would never threaten another human diplomat. More importantly, his death would send a message to anyone else considering similar actions. As alarms began sounding throughout the palace, Marcus activated his extraction protocols. Within minutes, he would be back aboard his ship, disappearing into hyperspace before the Altarian military could respond. The evidence would be transmitted to his team for distribution, ensuring that the conspiracy's exposure couldn't be suppressed. But the real message wasn't in the evidence. It was in the fear that would spread through the galactic community when they learned what had happened to Counselor Vexithon. The galaxy would remember that humanity's capacity for peace was matched only by their capacity for precise, overwhelming violence when that peace was threatened. Marcus Chen had retired the day his mother asked him to choose a different path. Tonight, the shadow of Terra had returned, and the galaxy would never forget what that meant. 6 months after Counselor Vexthon's death, the galaxy had changed in ways that Marcus could never have anticipated. He stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching Earth grow larger through the viewport as he approached, humanity's homeworld for the first time since his transformation, back into the shadow. The evidence he had extracted from Vexthon and the crystalline operatives had accomplished exactly what he intended. The conspiracy was exposed in exhaustive detail, leading to the arrest of 17 council members and the dissolution of several crystalline trade partnerships. The systematic murder of human diplomats had been revealed to the galactic community, generating outrage and demands for justice. But there had been consequences he hadn't foreseen. Marcus. came Admiral Rodriguez's voice through the communication system. "Are you ready to face the tribunal?" He activated the holographic display, seeing the Admiral's worried expression. Behind her, he could make out the interior of the military command center on Luna Station, where his fate would be decided in the coming hours. "As ready as anyone can be for a war crimes trial," he replied. The irony wasn't lost on him. The evidence he had gathered through torture and assassination had brought justice for his mother's killers, but his methods had violated every galactic law regarding the treatment of prisoners and the sovereignty of member worlds. The same council that had been corrupted by crystalline influence was now demanding his prosecution for the very actions that had exposed that corruption. "The charges are extensive," Rodriguez continued. "Unlawful infiltration, torture, assassination of a sitting council member, and violation of the enhancement prohibition protocols. If convicted, you'll face execution or permanent exile." Marcus nodded, accepting the consequences with the same cold calm he had brought to his mission. "What about the others, my team?" "Sarah, Yuki, and the rest have been cleared. The evidence shows they provided only intelligence support, not direct participation in the killings. They'll face disciplinary action, but nothing criminal. That was something, at least. His friends would survive his choices, even if he wouldn't. Marcus had made his peace with that possibility the moment he reactivated the enhancement protocols. "There's something else," Rodriguez said, her expression becoming even more troubled. "The Zephyrian Empire has requested a meeting with human leadership. They want to discuss a formal alliance." Marcus felt a surge of dark amusement. "They've decided they'd rather have us as allies than enemies." The elimination of Vexathon and the exposure of the conspiracy convinced them that humanity is far more dangerous than they realized. They're offering technology transfers and mutual defense agreements. The same species that killed your mother's space station now wants to be our best friends. The transformation in galactic politics had been swift and dramatic. When news of the Shadow's return spread through the political networks, species that had viewed humanity as naive peacekeepers suddenly remembered the dark legends from the early expansion period. Stories of human military units that had ended conflicts by eliminating every potential threat, of enhancement programs that created soldiers who could single-handedly destroy entire fleets. The peaceful facade that humanity had maintained for decades had cracked, revealing the predators beneath. And the galaxy was reacting with a mixture of terror and respect that Marcus recognized from the old days. "They're afraid," he said. "Terrified," Rodriguez confirmed. "Half the council members are requesting human bodyguards, convinced that if we could eliminate Vexthan in his own fortress, we could reach anyone. The other half are proposing restrictions on human movement and communication." Marcus ended the transmission and prepared for his final approach to Earth. Whatever happened at the tribunal, he had achieved his primary objective. His mother's killers were dead or imprisoned, the conspiracy was destroyed, and humanity's position in galactic politics had been fundamentally altered. But the cost was becoming clear. The peace his mother had worked to build was fracturing, replaced by a stability based on fear rather than understanding. Human diplomats were no longer seen as mediators but as potential threats, their words carrying the implicit backing of enhanced soldiers and classified weapons programs. The shuttle ride down to Earth's surface gave him time to reflect on the changes within himself. The enhancement nanites had never fully deactivated after his mission, leaving him trapped in a state between human and weapon. His emotional responses remained muted, his empathy limited to a small circle of people he had designated as worthy of protection. He was becoming like Chen 7, the prototype who had lost his ability to distinguish between threats and innocence. The difference was that Marcus was aware of the transformation and had no intention of letting it progress to the point of indiscriminate killing. The tribunal convened, in the same chamber where his mother's memorial service had been held, a deliberate choice that wasn't lost on him. Representatives from dozens of species sat in judgment, many of them the same politicians who had ignored the conspiracy that led to Elena's death. "Marcus Chen," announced the tribunal's president, a Procyon whose crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights. "You stand accused of crimes against galactic peace and order. How do you plead?" Marcus stood at attention, his enhanced posture reflecting decades of military training. "Guilty on all counts," a murmur ran through the chamber. Most defendants attempted to justify their actions or claim legal technicalities. Marcus simply accepted responsibility for what he had done. "Do you wish to present evidence in mitigation?" the president asked. "No," Marcus replied. "My actions were calculated and deliberate. I knew the consequences when I chose to pursue justice through force rather than law." The tribunal deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was exactly what Marcus had expected. Guilty on all charges, with a sentence of permanent exile from galactic civilization. "However," the president continued, "in recognition of the services you provided in exposing the conspiracy against human diplomatic personnel, this tribunal offers you a choice. Accept immediate exile to an uninhabited system, or volunteer for the new enhanced human security protocol." Marcus felt a cold smile cross his features. Even in defeat, the galaxy's politicians couldn't resist using him. The enhanced human security protocol was their attempt to harness the fear his actions had generated, creating an official program that would legitimize the use of enhanced humans as enforcement agents. "What would my duties be?" he asked. "Elimination of threats to galactic stability that conventional law enforcement cannot address. You would operate with full legal authority but under strict oversight." The irony was perfect. They were offering to make him an official assassin, a sanctioned monster who could eliminate problems while allowing the politicians to maintain their moral superiority. He would become what he had always been, but with legal backing instead of moral justification. "I accept exile," Marcus said. The decision surprised them, but he had already made his choice. He would not become a tool for the same system that had failed to protect his mother. His war was over, and he had accomplished what he set out to do. As he was escorted from the chamber, Marcus caught sight of Admiral Rodriguez in the gallery. She nodded once, a gesture of respect and understanding. She knew as he did that sometimes the only way to protect peace was to become something that could never be part of it. 3 days later, Marcus Chen piloted his ship toward the edge of known space, carrying supplies for a life of permanent solitude. He would never see his friends again, never walk on Earth or any inhabited world. But his mother's killers were dead, humanity's position in the galaxy was secure, and the conspiracy that had threatened human diplomats was destroyed. In his final transmission to Earth, he attached a message for any human who might one day face a similar choice. "Sometimes," he said, "the only way to preserve what you love is to become something it can never accept. I regret the necessity but not the choice." The galaxy would remember Elena Chen as a woman who died trying to build peace between enemies. They would remember Marcus Chen as the monster who avenged her. Both legacies were true and both were necessary. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the shadow of Terra disappeared into legend, carrying the burden of justice fulfilled and humanity protected, no matter the cost to his soul.